This video is a sort of follow-up from my previous video where I made my first computer. That video was basically me summarizing my experience of the build process, which totally went okay with no trouble at all. I assume that most people that watch this video on a PC are using Windows, and if you assume that the experience of using Linux is very different from Windows, you are correct. If you're trying to transition away from Windows to Linux, but you don't really know anything about Linux, then you are making a terrible choice. You will most likely get pretty overwhelmed by the lack of information that you currently have. By all means, I'm not an expert on Linux. In fact, I'm actually somewhat clueless as well. Most videos about Linux on YouTube are usually very technical or too serious, so on this video, I'll try not to be too technical or too serious, and by the end of this video, I want you to get at least somewhat clearer about what Linux is. I'm going to show you some Linux distro, the installation of said distro, using the distro, and show you how terrible it really is. A Linux distro is an operating system that includes the Linux kernel for its kernel functionality. Basically, these Linux distros were created by other people or companies to make a functional desktop for your computer, and there are lots to choose from. Debian, for example, is a distro that rarely gets an update. In contrary, distro like Fedora gets an update very frequently. There are a lot more Linux distros you can choose. On this video, I'm going to use Arch, which is a community-driven distro that is notorious for being pretty bare-bone and also bleeding edge like Fedora. And using Arch apparently makes me really cool. The first thing you need to do is download the Linux ISO file from the Arch website. If you want to install it directly to your machine, you can create an installation media by putting that ISO file into an empty, preferably 8GB or more USB flash drive. You can do that very easily using Windows software called Rufus. On this video, I'm not going to do that and instead use a virtual machine, which is a way to run an OS inside your existing one. Basically, running a computer inside a computer. When you finally boot it for the first time, you'll encounter this installation terminal. To start the installation of Arch Linux, you can follow this guide in the wiki and waste your time. Start the installation of Arch Linux, just type in the Arch install and hit enter. This would launch a guided installer of Arch Linux. Most of the options are pretty much straightforward, like selecting your region, but there are some options that you need to pay attention on. First is the disk configuration. Make sure that you install the OS on the correct drive that you wanted. If you only have one drive, then it is pretty straightforward. It will then ask about the file system that you wanted. The closest one here is BTRFS. The second thing is the authentication. Name the user and the password that you want for the computer and add it as a super user. The third thing is the profile. This is the part where you pick the desktop environment that you wanted. The most common desktop environment to select is KDE Plasma, GNOME, Cinnamon, and XFCE. I'm going to pick XFCE because it is the lightest one and also the oldest looking one to give you a bad impression of Linux. The final thing that you need to pay attention on is the additional packages. If you want a package for an application to come pre-installed with the system, put it here. I recommend to pick Flatpak and a browser like Firefox. Once all of that was done, just quick install and wait until it prompts a message asking you to reboot the system. If you're installing directly on your machine, this is also the moment to unplug your USB flash drive. When the reboot is done, you can finally log in and use Arch Linux. This is the XFCE desktop environment. It is really light, barely uses 1GB of RAM. You can try out the virtual desktop switching here, as you can tell everything works accordingly as you configure it in the installation. You can try browsing on the internet. Wait a minute, why is there no internet? Oh, god damn it. On this video, I'm going to use Zorin OS, which is an Ubuntu-based Linux distro that is beginner-friendly. The installation is pretty straightforward. The only thing that you need to pay attention on is the drive for the distro and your user profile. Just wait until all of that was done, reboot the system, and finally try it out. Zorin OS has a desktop environment that looks pretty modern and doesn't take that much resource from your hardware. By default, it already has all the utilities that you need, such as a browser, a file manager, and a bootleg Microsoft Office called LibreOffice. You can even install some third-party application by using Flatpak with a single command line. Here's a browser that I installed by using Flatpak, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The first thing that you should do when you boot up the system for the first time is updating it. The amazing thing about Linux is that you can update your entire system and its application with a single command line. Each distro have their own arguments, so how about Zorin OS? Well, you can go ahead and check the Zorin OS forum and they will tell you how to update it. And that's honestly the last thing that I wanted to show you in order to start up on the Linux desktop. Another thing that I like to point out is that some people say that the commands on the terminal is kind of dangerous. That is not true. Modern Linux distros have a safety rail for some of these commands, so it will stop you from doing something dangerous such as deleting your entire system.